So let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. Where did we leave off? Yeah, running together. Good cell groups? All sorts of things. Oh, wow, okay. So where did we leave off? We left off in Hebrews 12, and Alex is here. And that is an answer to prayer immediately. Okay. So, we left off in Hebrews 12. Last week, we talked, continuing saga of the race that we're running. We talked about the fact that we're not running it alone. That we have a, as it were, racing partner to help us keep stride, to help pick us up, to not feel so alone as we go through those different hazards that we come across as we run the race. Today, we're going to continue with that, and we're going to talk about how that race is actually run. Because remember, as we read through Hebrews 12, who is the author speaking to in this regard? Who is this to? Jewish Christians. Jewish Christians that are doing what? They're contemplating the law. Apparently my mother's been paying attention this year. So the author is writing specifically to people who are living the life as Christians, but yet they long for what they used to have. And why is it that they long for what they used to have? Why did the Israelites at the mountain long for this nostalgia? They long for what they used to have because surely it was better than what they're dealing with now. Because what they're dealing with now is painful. Painful, possibly even to the point of death for them. So they long for what was, because all that we really remember of what used to be was the good times, unless there was like a major trauma issue, because that sticks out in your mind. But generally speaking, it's like when you go to a funeral, everyone just talks about how great the guy was, even if he was not a great guy. I've even participated in a few of those things. That's what is done. So, as we look back, as we come to the conclusion of chapter 12, he is bringing it back around, restating things that were stated at the beginning of the book as we are about to conclude. So we're going to read chapter 12, verses 18 through 29. You have not come to a physical mountain, to a place of flaming fire, darkness, gloom, and whirlwind, as the Israelites did at Mount Sinai. For they heard an awesome trumpet blast and a voice so terrible that they begged God to stop speaking. They staggered back under God's command. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned to death. Moses himself was so frightened at the sight that he said, I am terrified and I am trembling. No, you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to countless thousands of angels in a joyful gathering. You have come to the assembly of God's firstborn children, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God himself, who is the judge over all things. You have come to the spirits of the righteous ones in heaven who have now been made perfect. You have come to Jesus, the one who mediates the new covenant between God and the people, and to the sprinkled blood which speaks of forgiveness instead of crying out for vengeance like the blood of Abel. Be careful that you do not refuse to listen to the one who is speaking. For if the people of Israel did not escape when they refused to listen to Moses, the earthly messenger, we will certainly not escape if we reject the one who speaks to us from heaven. When God spoke from Mount Sinai, his voice shook the earth. But now he makes another promise. Once again, I will shake not only earth, but the heavens. And this means that all of creation will be shaken and removed, so that only the unshakable will remain. Since we are receiving a kingdom that is unshakable, let us be thankful and please God by worshiping Him with holy fear and awe. For our God is a devouring fire. Apparently, I think this is a very powerful passage. And I'm not alone in that. So let's take a little bit and discover what exactly it's saying to us. We've been talking for this past month, for longer than that really, about the race that we're running. Regardless of if we consciously thought about it, it's all been about the race because it's about our lives. Where do we get the foundation for our lives? Where do we find that base to start off from? Where do we start from? Do we wander aimlessly down the course, or do we have a sense of direction, a sense of where we've come from, and a sense of where we need to go? Those are the questions that we've spent all year discussing. Instead of having this thing, this peg hanging in midair, we've spent all year discussing this solid base that we have, this true understanding that what we believe has nothing to do with fairy tale. It's based on reality. It's based on truth. We all come from different places. We all have different talents. We all do things differently. If I were to go jogging with John, I would do it differently than he does. And he would leave me in his dust, but that's beside the point. We all do things differently. That's not true. Actually, John would slow himself down and run along my side. But we all come from various places. There are various forms to run. There are different methods used. There are different motivations that are used. So the author of Hebrews gives a contrasting view here of how this race is won. So we know who it was written to: Jewish Christians longing for the comfort of the law, the ease of the law. So it's brought back to that. This is an understanding. And he says here in Hebrews 12, you have not come to Mount Sinai. What does that represent? What does Mount Sinai represent? It represents the law because that's where God presented the law to them. God came down to the mountain and in His holy presence gave the law to Moses, who brought it to the people. Now, what did the people do while Moses was gone so long in conversation with God? They built an idol. After they built an idol, they had a party to build to the freaking idol. This angered Moses so much that he threw down the tablets. And how much did it anger God? The idol was burnt up and its ashes ground and added to water. And they were made to drink the bitter water. What was supposed to happen if even an animal touched the mountain during this time? I don't know about you, but I'm kind of frightened by this. They were so overpowered by the sound of God speaking that they begged Him to stop. Why? Because they were afraid. Our God is an awesome God. It's understandable that we would be afraid at hearing His voice. And I say it's understandable because we have straight up example of that, the very beginning of this word that He's given us. As He came for His evening stroll through the garden, He called for Adam. He called for Adam, which up until this point in time had been a welcoming call. God is here to walk with me. Except this day, Adam hid. He was afraid of even the soft voice of God coming for the stroll. It is easy to react to God's voice with fear. Because that fear needed to be dealt with, that is how he approached the Israelites. He approached them on the level that they needed to understand. Because they were his chosen people. They needed to understand him. Now God comes to us differently, doesn't he? And why is that? Because he comes through Christ. Christ who has walked among us. Someone who came alongside, and we weren't fearful of him because he looked just like us, acted just like us, did the things that we do every day. So there was no need to be afraid of him. He's one of us. And because of what he has done, we have the possibility to approach God without that immense fear. We have not come to Mount Sinai, where everything was based on fear of our awesome God. We have come to Mount Zion. We have come to the New Jerusalem, a model of what it is in heaven. We have come to the heavenly mountain. We don't have to approach it with fear. We have been given a guide. The author says, here is where we were, and here is where we are. Do you not understand that where we are is so much better? There is a new technique to run this race. No longer must you be filled with a terrible fear from God, but instead understand that he is an awesome God, that you can approach him with love and respect, with reverence and awe, which is different than trembling fear. There is a new form. There is a different way to run the race. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not in all of your jobs. My job is specifically to teach people to do things differently. You may be surprised to know I get a lot of resistance to this. Because we develop a comfort in those things. Just like the Israelites, just like the Jewish people developed a comfort. The Israelites developed a comfort for the way things were in Egypt, even though it sucked. The Jewish Christians that are being addressed developed a certain way of doing things under the law that brought comfort to them. But we have a new way to run the race. We have new motivations, a new understanding of how to accomplish what needs to be done. New things come along all the time. And sometimes they're awesome, and they seem awesome, and they're accepted. But there's new perspectives. I'm pressing buttons. How many of you are familiar with high jump? Who hasn't watched the Olympics? Come on. Yeah, there you go, huh? Right? So every time you've watched it, they always seem to go over on their back and arch it, right? That's not the way that they used to do things. There are several different ways to jump over that. Who cares what they're saying? There's that. And that is the style that was used for years. It's simply straddling the pole. And that was the norm before the new style came out. It was very limiting because your mass all had to be lifted over the bar at the same time. So there was a limit to how high you could go, but it got the job done. You got over the bar. You completed your task. Before there was a pad, there was the scissor, because there was sawdust on the other side, and you had to land standing up or you would be in pain. But now, there is a pad there, and that style is no longer needed. Now, we have the Fosbury Fop that was debuted in the Olympics. It was revolutionary. Only a small portion of your mass needs to be over the bar at any one point in time. It is not only the most efficient, but it is by far proven to be the best method of jumping over it. In fact, because of the Fosbury Fop, they have gone higher than they have ever gone before. There are people that are resistant to that change. In fact, everybody was laughing at Fosbury when he did it his first time. What the heck is he doing? If you don't believe me, there are videos of him doing this during the Olympics. But you know what? Freaking cleared the bar. He did things differently than what people remembered. Oh, we don't jump that way. That's kind of crazy looking. That's exactly what's going on here, people. It's exactly what's going on here. It seems a little bit more difficult. Personally, I can't do that. My back will not bend like that. Literally. Because of a car accident I was in, my spine went straight, and it will not bend that way. But as I get older, it's doing this. But it won't go back the other way. It's weird. There is a new way that is being communicated. This is revolutionary, just like the Fosbury Flop. It's kind of different. It takes a lot of pain to get it right. Let me tell you, it hurts like you wouldn't believe when you land on that bar. Personal experience right here. We have now the proper way, the proper technique to run the race that we're running. Instead of approaching with fear or running away and hiding because we hear God walking towards us, we know that we don't need to hide. We don't need to be ashamed of our nakedness, ashamed of our difference, because we are not like God. True, we are made in His image, but we are not like God. And that's the problem that Adam had. That is the realization that he came to. His buddy, who he walked through the garden with every day, was not like him. And that's why he hid, because he realized he has no business walking with God, except for God extends His grace to him and chooses to walk with him. Now, through Christ, we understand that God chooses, seeks after, comes after us. Our God is a consuming fire. He comes alongside us. He beckons to us. He searches after us. And through His Son, we know that we don't have to be afraid when we hear His voice approaching. We don't have to tremble. Though everything may be shaking around us, we have an unshakable foundation in our relationship with Christ, so that we may be one with Him as He is one with the Father. This is a new technique. This is revolutionary. We approach God now with gratitude, with reverence and awe. We approach Him by answering His call instead of hiding from His call. So, what is your call? What is your call? What do you hear? When you hear the awesome, all-consuming, powerful God calling to you, saying, where are you at? Where are you at? How do you respond to that call? And what is your resistance to this new technique? Just like people resisted the flop, just like everybody, literally everybody at work resists the new techniques that I show them and instruct them how to use. We have a new technique to approach God through His Son with gratitude, reverence, and awe, answering the call. This is an unshakable foundation. Though everything else will fall apart, this will remain still and calm. So when your world is crumbling around you, when you're scared and don't know what to do, when you think to yourself, why is this happening to me? Eliminate those worries and those fears. Understand that you are in a partnership with God. You are in a relationship with someone that loved you so much, He pursued you to the end of the earth and even to His death. And then He kicked its butt too. What's your response to the call? How do you run the race? Are you resistant to the new technique? Resistant to the new technique? Discuss this on the threads. Come to an understanding of what it is that is happening here. As we start to enter into a world that exemplifies the exact same type of issues that they were dealing with, as we deal with all sorts of drama and shaking going on, we need to remain firm in this truth and understand it. Remain firm in our faith that has a foundation, that's not just kind of out there, no matter how much the world tells you that it is. Let's go ahead and pray.